Welcome, everyone. My name is Nay Farber. I'm a student at SUNY Empire, located at the Buffalo campus, and I'm your host for this interview. A special thanks to the Buffalo Project for giving me the opportunity to use this platform to reach out to you today and to bring you this special guest that I have. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Seana Logsdon. She is the Senior Director of Academic Success for SUNY Empire State College. She is joining us today to discuss SUNY Empire State Connects, a collection of live virtual programming developed as a collaboration between students, faculty, and staff, where students can find study skills workshops, health and wellness activities, and do arts and cultural explorations as a way to keep connectivity in a time where staying at home is required. So welcome, Seana.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. Love to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. So let's get started with a little bit about you. I got in my notes that you have a background in psychology and student personnel administration,
Mm-hmm.
and that also one of your areas of interest is developing open educational resources,
Right. Yes.
such as Jumpstart, which probably students have seen already.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little more about that background and your interests?
Sure, absolutely. So most of my career in higher education has been spent focusing on what I'm going to call student success initiatives. So whether that be overseeing academic support and the development of tutoring services or advising services, or whether that has been specifically focused on teaching courses as freshman year experience courses along that lines, all of these have been really stemmed around this idea that if I can help and others help students be successful in that first term, they're more likely to go on based on that successful experience and really move toward graduation at a rate that is positive and meets their particular goals. As part of that process, we've learned that it's really important to have what I'm going to call just-in-time support for students. So traditionally, we have had a history in the past of wanting to give students lots of information up front and an idea so that students could be prepared for almost any scenario when they enter college. The challenge with that is that the information just becomes such a big pile that it's hard to really identify what gets connected to what particular need as you're going through it. So while we still want to give students access to that information at all times, we also need to provide students help or assistance or resources at a time when they're most likely to need that specific resource. And that's where open educational resources come in. Traditionally, they're developed in a way so they can be accessed 24/7. So a student who's on any work schedule, who has any sort of obligation, can access that particular resource at the time when they need it. Now, sometimes when you hear about open educational resources, folks are referring to textbooks, and that's another form of an open educational resource. The advantage of any open educational resource textbook is that it's free of cost to the student. And so that's another important element about helping students be successful, is to not actually have them have more costs than is necessary to get access to information. So my interest in OER development, more likely in the area of tools such as things like our assignment calculator or a thesis generator, or maybe even an interactive video on how to work with sources, is about this idea about giving students free access to resources at a time that fits their particular schedule and in a way that meets the need you have at that particular moment, as opposed to a lot of information up front that you may or may not know you even need until you reach that particular challenge where you need it.
Exactly. And we're talking about need and the information at the time when we need it. Going back a little bit to mid-March, when we started, understanding that we had a change in our reality and that we had to respond differently. What was that like? Take us back to that moment. How was this, how does this connect to the creation of SUNY Empire Connects in a time of need?
Sure, absolutely. I think when we started, seeing major transitions and the way that we were interacting in the higher education environment, in the workplace environment, in our students' environment, things escalated pretty rapidly. Even though, we were hearing about COVID since January, it actually having a very real impact, on our daily lives happened more in our mid-March period. And when it began to really ramp up, that you could very clearly see there was going to be a significant change in our practice, whether that's the way that students took courses at a distance versus face-to-face, or whether that was the fact that we were all going to move to working from our homes in a much more isolated environment. We started thinking about very quickly that the implications were not just on the way we do business in terms of coursework or classes, but rather on this sense of need for connection. We wanted to look at ways in which we could still maintain connectivity, create a social community, one where we could see students having their needs met in that just-in-time concept, and that we could think about really a wide range of ways to connect with students. So Sammy actually was a really innovative student who said, I think there's a way we can maintain this connectivity. I want to work with other students to do that. At the same time, there were offices in the student success division of the college that were having similar conversations about, how do we make sure we stay connected with our students? How do we make sure we stay connected with each other? And based on that, a team consisting of Dr. Rihanna Rogers, who is a faculty member at Empire State College, Ashley Mason, who works in the Student Success Division, and myself as the Senior Director for Academic Success, came together and said, how do we bring all these ideas under one umbrella so that, again, students get a clear message about where they can go for this sort of connective experience. And so we could also work with our own faculty and staff to both be presenters and participants in the process, so that, again, this concept of community would emerge in a way that was cohesive, had some room to grow, and could really reflect the needs that we knew at that point would be emerging and not always needs we could predict. So we were looking for a model that gave us that type of range and nimbleness, I think, to actually be able to be responsive to everyone's needs in the process.
Yeah, and it has been this flexibility, I believe, that has made it pretty popular. I mean, tell us about how things are going in the forums and what people are doing and how they're responding.
Sure. Yeah. When we talked about this, I mean, Sammy's idea, I think, about this concept about yoga and health and wellness, we realized right away was a track we wanted to have in this particular setup. So we said, okay, we know that we need to keep people in a good physical space, active while they were still in their homes when movement is likely to be restrictive. And that really led us also to thinking about, well, we need some mental health awareness, also some mental health sort of things that we can do, whether that be meditation, whether that just be very practical strategies, cognitive behavioral strategies for stress management, things like that, that we could build to sort of round out that particular stream or track in our programming. Another track that we looked at was helping students be successful inside their academic courses. So what types of things might they encounter now that, while they existed previously, might be ramped up to a new level? So time management, for example. We want to offer types of workshops in time management because we know you're not just managing your traditional schedule. Now you may be in a position where you're trying to homeschool your children and attend to your young children's needs all day long while you are still expected to be working from home and go to school. That's time management it's making. So we have this other track that is more about sort of academic skills support or development in that particular area. We also have an area that dealt with arts and culture, because arts and culture is about community and it is about finding ways of expression. And it really allows for a diversity of perspectives. So we have a track that's really dedicated to arts and culture. And that, I mean, is a really wide definition. So in some ways it may be more formal, like museum tours with Dr. Rogers, or it might be something that is more about traditional creative expression that you might find through the arts, through photography. And it could be something as simple as doing a game night, an online board game night, which is something that is another aspect that we've done as well. In addition to that, we have a track that looks at sort of career and financial readiness. So we know this is a great time of unemployment, that people might need to be actually refreshing their resume. They maybe find themselves unexpectedly out of work and need now to do things like LinkedIn, which they hadn't been doing before. So we have a track that is dedicated to those types of both materials for building the employment portfolio, as well as reevaluating where you are in the employment field. And then we have a series of what we're calling student-to-student connections, because we think it's really important for students to be able to tell their stories to other students. And so there's a coffee talk hour that we host. And then last but not least, we know that navigating these changes are bringing about a lot of unexpected circumstances. And some of those are really horrific for our students, whether it's being diagnosed yourself with COVID or knowing someone else who's lost a life due to COVID. And so we have a variety of drop-in hours that we're offering, so that if there's a change in circumstance that we need to know about, they can get real-time help on that. And even if that question is not something they want to pose in that drop-in hour, they can drop in and see who that person is and make a separate appointment to actually talk with them. So we're trying that notion of flexibility is that we have these tracks, but what evolves out of those tracks really varies every week. We've gotten over 60 proposals in, and those proposals have come from faculty, they have come from staff, they have come from students. And so we've had a whole variety of presenters. And so that programming is changing every week. While there are a few programs we keep on every week because they sort of have a following, they're building a following, which we think is really nice, which again leads to that sense of community we were hoping for. But at the same time, we're also providing variation because we know there may be something that pops up that we hadn't thought about. So next week, we're going to be offering a session on grief and loss because we're seeing that become more of a need. So that's that real-time, just-in-time programming we're trying to respond to at the same time.
That's great. I mean, that flexibility really allows to cater to what is needed in the community. So,
Yeah.
speaking about following, I'm
Yeah.
really interested in that.
Yeah,
What are
sure.
the programs that have been having the most following?
I think our coffee talk programming has been very interesting for students. I think there's a group that's meeting pretty regularly to really talk about what's happening with COVID. I think the museum tours have been very popular as well. I think that any of our topics that deal with managing stress have been very popular. So particularly if they provide strategies, specific strategies about how to manage stress. And that could range from cognitive behavioral strategies, that lens, to meditation. There was a humming meditation that I was on this morning that was really a very particular form of meditation. So I think anything that is this concept of how do I get through my day and manage unexpected stress or sort of stress that's been compounded in the current situation. And then I think while the numbers may be smaller, there are these sort of pockets of interest, a craft corner, something that's about a Pilates class, or something I think that will gain popularity over time, which is a family trivia night. I think those things, we tend to see a few participants and then the word grows. And then I think what is very real in this crisis is that for some folks in those initial weeks, it was everything they could do to just get through the day, one foot in front of the other. But as a sense of a new normal sort of lands, we're seeing those folks kind of emerge again and say, hey, yeah, I'm ready to make those kind of connections in that space.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have been seeing trends.
Mhm.
What have you learned so far?
I think we've learned that we have an incredibly talented group of students, faculty, and staff at this institution. And the talents that they have are not the ones that we always see in our daily work life. I think a lot of what folks are presenting on are oftentimes passions that are outside of their traditional work life that we see every day. So, whether it's someone from the Advisement Center who's doing Pilates, or whether it's someone from student success who's doing something with crafts, or it's someone who actually is using using their daily expertise, right? One of some of our faculty who are saying, this is what I've made my life's career about. Let me bring those particular skills and knowledge to you in this very helpful, applied fashion. There are a lot of really talented people. I think the other thing that I think we're seeing is that in a place where it's sometimes difficult to have space for social connection, right? Because I think as working adults come to SUNY Empire State College, they're balancing work, family, school. And in that sort of really heavy lift, there's not a lot of space for social. But I think in this time, that need for connection, or that need for sort of socialization is taking on a greater priority. And so I think this programming and this time is a really nice match for something that, hopefully might build a different level of student to student relationship than we've been able to really accomplish in the past, not because people weren't interested, but because they just didn't feel that they could make the space. And that space is emerging in a really unexpected way, I think, for folks.
Right. So it seems like people have been, so obviously you envisioned this project to keep on going because it's been successful and it's been good and people are
Right,
going on.
right.
Do you have any particular vision for it?
We've really received an enthusiastic response at all levels about this programming. And so I think some of the conversations that we're having today, I think in our initial weeks, because we moved very quickly to really put up what is sometimes like a small conference schedule every week, we're trying to identify how to make this sustainable in the future. So I think there's interest that we've heard pretty loud and clear. There's interest. I think the reality is when people go back to their daily lives, they won't have that space I just talked about in the daytime, at least, to do the kind of level of programming we're doing now, because we're doing about 20, 25, sometimes even 30 programs a week. And I think that what we'd like to see is probably an evolution of this program that may be a more modified schedule, but still maintain the elements or the tracks that we've seen right now. That could be actually run on a more long-term basis. So maybe it's not 30 programs or 20 programs in a week, but maybe there's 2 times a week that there's programming that students could actually log into. And I think we also really want to hear back. I think as an institution, we try and make sure that what we think is a good idea really is a good idea. And so part of that is a need to assess what we're doing. And so we're now moving into a phase where we'll start sending out just some simple feedback links for students so we can hear sort of firsthand, yes, this was great and this is what it did for me, or no, maybe that's not what I'm looking for right now. And so I think our initial stages, which is to ramp up that program pretty quickly, which is what we did, and now we ourselves are starting to be able to take a breath as well and say, okay, is this doing what we think it's doing? All signs point towards yes, but you know what, we want some objective evidence about that as well. And so we'll start to assess that, and I think that will really inform, I think, what the future look of this program is once we really get that student feedback and hear the voices, I think, on that.
Correct. And I'm sure that the challenges that you have now compared to whatever's going to happen, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
completely different. So can we talk a little bit about what you still need, what kind of support you still need from the community to be able to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need feedback. I think exactly what we were just talking about. I think we need to know what it is that are those large items that are looming. And as this evolves and we get back to our whatever that new normal might be, right, when after this is all over, I think we'll have to hear again, what are the needs then? And that's the beauty and sometimes the challenge of just-in-time programming, right, is that you have to be willing to be nimble, and you have to be willing to know that what worked for the past 6 months might not be what's needed in the next 6 months. And I think we have to be cognizant that there may be cycles of things that we need when we think about programming. It might be that, as you near graduation, you really have to ramp up career counseling, right? Drop-in hours, something like that. It might be that, we need a health and wellness sort of track in the winter when folks are stuck inside. So I think the question of what we need is, I think we need that sort of constant cycle of feedback so that we know how to respond. And then I think, from an infrastructure standpoint, we have to decide where does this program live, if it's going to be long-term, who owns it, and some of the more practical, what I would call program management and planning ideas that for right now we're managing, but were this to be a long-term program, how might we do that? And how might we do that in a way that's effective for everyone and for the institution, and most importantly, right, for the students that we're serving in that? Because that's really the goal for all of
Correct.
us.
I guess we've reached the end of this conversation, and I really
Yeah,
do thank you for your time today and for talking
yeah,
about SUNY Empire Connects, this wonderful initiative. And I guess I would like to remind students to take advantage of the opportunity to log into the sessions.
absolutely.
Remind them also, like you just said, Seana, to give feedback
Yeah.
and to participate when it's needed, and that's how you can collaborate.
Yeah, and just real quickly, the direct link if folks want to log in to look at the schedule every week is www.esc.edu/ESC Connects, all lowercase. And that's the quickest way to find the schedule every week.
All right, so I'm going to repeat that for everyone. It's, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
esc.edu/ESC
Hmm.
Connects.
Correct.
Okay,
Hmm.
that's where you can find all the information from ESC programming that is fresh every Sunday, right?
Correct. Yes. New schedule is out by every Sunday. Correct.
Awesome.
Okay.
So again, thank you for being with us
Yeah,
today.
absolutely. Thank you for
Um,
asking.
and we are going to continue with programming. There's more programming. There's more interviews that are coming. Seana Logsdon and Sammy Maitland's interview is going to be, these were our first, and we hope to do more in the future. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. Remember to log into esc.edu/ESC Connects, and we'll see you next time.